Hey fellow detective, welcome back to my channel. Today we are about to embark on a chilling journey into the shadows of a largely overlooked case from distant corners of China. Rumors swirl about its link to a clandestine cult and an nefarious use of dark magic for human sacrifice. As our journey back to the bleak winter of 2009, our tales unfold in the tranquil rural village of Chongqing, China. It was then that the cryptic demise of a 13-year-old boy named Hong sent shock waves through the peaceful hamlet. Hong was discovered lifeless in his home, bizarrely wrapped in a red floral dress in his sister's swimsuit. Before we dive into this sinister case, please subscribe to the channel if you have an appetite for more bone-chilling true crime narrative. This case took place in the hilly city of Chongqing, China. Hong, a 7th grade student at the local middle school, had a tough life as one of the many left-behind children in rural China. Every weekend, he would make the journey to visit his parents and gather the living expenses he needed for the following week. However, on October 24, 2009, Hong shocked his father by expressing his desire to return to his rural hometown instead of staying in the city with his parents. Concerned but thinking his son was homesick, Hong's father gave him the necessary living expenses for the upcoming week. Days passed, and on Tuesday, November 3rd, Hong's father tried calling him but couldn't get through. Worried, he contacted the school where Hong was studying and was devastated to learn that his son had not shown up for classes in several days. Fast forward to November 5th, 2009, and Hong's father returned home to give him some much-needed living expenses, only to find a scene that no parents should ever have to witness. As his father arrived home, he found that both the front and side doors wouldn't open, even though they were usually left unlocked. With a sense of unease, he walked to the back door and found it slightly ajar. As he pushed it open and looked inside, he was shocked to find his son, Hong, hanging from the ceiling beam. He rushed over and realized that his son had already passed away. The father was panicked because he was petrified by the scene before him. There was his son, dressed in a red dress. Underneath the red dress, he had on a one-piece swimsuit with a bra. His hands and feet were bound, and he was hanging from a ceiling beam suspended in mid-air. To make matters even more bizarre, there was a weight of about 1 kilogram hanging from his feet. The whole scene was eerie and disturbing. After discovering his son hanging from the ceiling, his father called the police right away. The crime scene investigators arrived quickly, and what they found was shocking. The media reports surrounding this case are absolutely chilling. It's been said that the boy's mother had a terrifying premonition the day before his body was found. She dreamed that a tall, ominous figure dressed in black with a sinister hat and a bag had secretly entered their home through a back door and urged her to leave. The dream was so vivid and haunting that it compelled both parents to return their home to investigate. A decade has passed since the incident, and someone has decided to document and compile a thorough account of the case. They set out to revisit the house, which was located in a remote area outside the village. Neglected and abandoned, the shabby house appeared as if no one had lived there for years. To reach the house, one had to walk through the path surrounded by trees. Back to the case, the room was a mess with clothes and miscellaneous items scattered all over the floor. Hong's textbooks and homework were strewn across the back and desk. His backpack, containing only 32.5 yuan, around $7, and his phone. On the back, There was a half-burned candle, a lighter, a VCD player with Senseiya discs, and a large number of Senseiya DVDs, as well as a study device. Senseiya, Knights of the Zodiac, is a very famous Japanese manga series. Hong was found hanging from the attic bin with 3 over marks on his body. A bench was overturned beside him, and there was urine on the ground. In addition to wearing a one-piece swimsuit, he had also stuffed the bra with fake breast, and there were traces of candle wax on his body and on the back. There have been rumors circulating online that there was a small hole in his forehead, but the forensic report did not mention anything about it. The only marks found on his body were the rope marks on his thighs, hands, ribs, and ankles. The forensic team estimated that he had died within 48 hours, which means he may have died on November 3rd or 4th. The question remains, why didn't he return to school on November 2nd, the Monday after the weekend? According to his teachers and neighbors, Hong was a quiet and introverted child who kept to himself. His father was also a simple and honest farmer who had no enemies or grudge with anyone. It doesn't seem like robbery or revenge killing, since his phone and money were still intact, and there were no signs of forced entry. What makes the case even more baffling is the fact that Hong was found dressed in women's clothing with fake breasts and bound with professional technique. The question remains, was he a victim of homicide, and if so, why use such complex methods? If the perpetrator wanted to kill a 13-year-old boy, there are many simpler ways to do it. The act of binding and suspending him increased the difficulty of the crime and prolongs the time spent at the scene, increasing the risk of being caught in the act. It doesn't make sense for the perpetrator to put themselves in such a vulnerable position. Cloaked in ignominy, Hong's fate may have been woven by a nefarious figure, possibly a sexual predator lurking in the shadows. A pedophile, perhaps. Subtle yet sinister clues lingered at the scene. The haunting presence of semen and urine, the chilling hints of cross-dressing and bondage. These clues might suggest a crime of sexual perversion, a dark desire that led to a horrendous act. Interestingly, though, the police only discovered semen on Han's body. No signs of struggle or physical harm marred his form, and eerie comes in the midst of a storm of confusion. A chilling conjecture arose. Could a perpetrator have extinguished Hong's life first, then meticulously bound and hung his body to satisfy their preferred gratification? Such motivations, twisted and inscrutable, belong to the dark recess of the human psyche, making this theory hard to dismiss outright. If this held true, Hong would have been a helpless victim, unable to put up any resistance. However, in a twist of this macabre tale, the forensic expert stood firmly against this hypothesis. The case was mentioned in an academic paper published by officials. Let's look into it. It reveals that Hong's body was found with lividity in the form of dark red patches, with the most notable patches on the upper side of his hands and legs. His belly was also green with decomposition. The paper also mentions 2 crucial pieces of evidence. There were no signs of injury or bleeding in his brain and other organs, and there were no traces of common pesticides and sleeping pills in his blood. The marks on his body indicate that he was bound while he was still alive and conscious. It's unclear whether he was bound voluntarily or with the help of someone else. Regardless, his cause of death was determined to be positional asphyxia. Positional asphyxia occurs when a person's breathing is restricted due to their body being in an abnormal position for an extended period. This type of asphyxia can occur when a person's limbs are bound and suspended at a certain height or when their arms are stretched horizontally and fixed in a place, or when their head is bent downwards for an extended period. Han was found hanging in a position that meets the criteria for positional asphyxia. The long bench found near the hang spot suggests that he may have climbed onto the bench and hung himself from the bin, accidentally tipping the bench over and rendering himself helpless. Many people questioned whether he could have achieved such a professional levels of bondage on his own. Some find it hard to believe that he could have done it alone without any help. To shed some light on this debate, we can refer to the forensic report which described the intricate biting pattern found on his body. Since the photos is too explicit, I would rather describe the situation to you. A white nylon rope was wrapped around the back of his lower thighs, running from the back to the front, and then passing through the scrotum to the back again, then under his arm to the front, where it was tied to both hands to form a single loop. The loop was then wrapped around his wrist once, and another white nylon rope was used to bind his arm tightly, passing over the bin of the house. The third white nylon rope was wrapped around his lower legs with multiple horizontal and vertical wraps, and 1 kilogram weight was tied to the end, barefoot. Looking at the biting pattern, it seems like it would be impossible for one person to achieve it on their own, but upon closer inspection, it's actually quite straightforward. The first part of the biting on the legs could have been done while he was sitting on the bench, with the second part being completed while standing on the bench. Finally to the hands, where it was formed into a loose loop. The loop allowed for some movement of the hands but not enough to escape. It's clear that he had practiced this biting pattern many times before, as evidenced by the friction marks on the bin of the house. With some skills and practice, it's entirely possible that he could have achieved this level of bondage on his own. The police find wet stains on the scene, which may suggest that Han had a tendency towards masochism. This is often associated with the submissive role in BDSM. Moreover, he was known to cross-dress, and his cousin had even caught him wearing her clothes before. This suggests that he may have had a fetish for dressing up as a woman. Some netizens have also pointed out that he was a fan of the anime Saint Seiya, which features scenes of bondage. The story of Saint Seiya is said to be a princess who was chained to a rock and offered as a sacrifice to the sea monster. It's possible that Han was inspired by Saint Seiya and sought to recreate the experience of obtaining his own cloth by using a rope instead of chains, due to a lack of iron chains in his home. The use of wax, padding, and weights may have been an attempt to recreate the training process shown in the anime. The mysterious circumstances surrounding Han's death have captivated the imaginations of internet detectives who have delved into the possibility that it was part of a weird and ancient Chinese occult ritual. Every detail of the scene seems to adhere to certain practice associated with tail sorcery, from the red dress to the expert knots, the weights, the tiny marks on the forehead, the wooden bin, and even the boy's birthday and time of death. Some speculate that a secretive sect may have been involved in the boy's death, sacrificing him in order to raise him as a ghost in accordance with ancient Chinese belief. To make it more understandable, it is similar to kumantong, a type of amulet or talisman that is commonly used in Thai and Southeast Asia spiritual traditions. It is believed to be a spirit of a child that has been enhanced by various magical incantations and rituals. Traditionally, the process of creating a kumantong involves obtaining the remains of an aborted or stillborn fetus and performing various rituals and spells to imbue it with spiritual power. So in this case, netizens have hypothesized that the 5 elements theory may be at play here, with each element represented by a specific ritual involving matter, the weights, water, the swimsuit, wood, the bin, fire, the red dress, and earth, the dirt floor. It's been suggested that the pinhole found on his forehead may have been used to separate his soul from his body, with the weights keeping it tethered to the earth. The red dress may have been used to bind the child's soul to his killer, while the wooden beam and expert knots may have been part of the ritual used to trap and manipulate his spirit. The police conclusion about the death of Hong was met with disbelief from the local community. Within just a month, they had declared that the boy's death was merely an accident that had resulted from a superstitious game. The verdicts left many scratching their heads, as it seems impossible to reconcile with the disturbing and bizarre scene that had been discovered. Hong's father was understandably skeptical of this explanation. He pointed out that the boy had been found wearing his sister's swimsuit and skirt, with his hands and feet tied up professionally and hanging from the roof. What kind of game could possibly lead to such a tragic outcome? The prevailing theory surrounding Hong's death is nothing short of shocking. According to some, the teenage boy had been harboring a secret sadomasochistic fetish and had died as a result of sexual asphyxia. In my opinion, the claim that a 13-year-old child in a rural area was involved in BDSM, it's hard to believe, especially if the incident happened 15 years ago. Given the limited prevalence of BDSM in China, even in larger cities, it seems unlikely that someone growing up in a rural area would have access to or knowledge of such practice. While this theory is disturbing enough on its own, there are others who believe that something even more sinister may have been at play. Some have suggested that his mother's first husband and eldest son may have conspired to kill the boy in revenge over a long-standing dispute. However, police have dismissed this theory, insisting that the pair had alibis that ruled out their involvement. The mystery surrounding Hong's death has left everyone feeling unsettled and afraid, and it's unclear whether the truth will ever be fully revealed one day. I really would like to know what your thoughts are about this case. What's your theory? Please leave a comment below. Stay safe and see you next time.